I don't think that we can really have an economy which produces near zero waste and which needs no new resources. Because in the end, a lot of our economy lives of growth, and we still need to have growth in much of the world, which is currently underdeveloped, where people still live in poverty. These regions need to experience substantial growth, and just don't think that the circular economy is realistic, especially if you have people who still live in very poor conditions. So the truth is that the global carbon reward is possibly actually the only realistic solution that I've seen to solving the climate crisis, because it actually incentivizes companies, individual governments to be proactive with climate change, to do something about the climate crisis. And it uses the momentum of capitalism to combat the climate crisis. I think that's really its main strength.
Do you think that the global carbon reward policy of providing carbon rewards, which are conditional grants, is a practical idea for economic decarbonisation?
Well, I would say yes, because one of the issues that currently exists with carbon capture is that no one really knows how to finance it. And essentially, the global carbon reward would incentivize companies to employ carbon capture technologies, right? And but not only that, it would also incentivize companies that have the ability to mine fossil fuels not to do so and to leave them in the ground. If you look at the current proposals for how we could still reach even a 2-degree target, they all envision some form of carbon capture. So the question is, of course, how do you pay for it? And so in that sense, these conditional grants that the global carbon reward policy foresees, I think it does precisely that. Because currently there is no real economic incentive for carbon capture. So one needs to be created, and I think the global carbon reward would be exactly that. What we will likely see over the course of the 21st century is that wet bulb temperatures, which are basically temperatures that you measure when you take a wet towel and you wrap it around the bulb with a thermometer, if those readings exceed 35 degrees, basically the human body would be incapable of surviving under such conditions. And what the current climate models foresee is that over the course of the 21st century, we will likely see such temperatures quite regularly in places, and we will have heat waves which could potentially kill millions. And so in that sense, taking quite drastic action in terms of quantitative easing, which the global carbon reward foresees, I think it is definitely reasonable, because it is quite a serious threat to a lot of people on Earth. I think that it is quite important to have the world's big economies on board for this, because obviously there are some risks associated with global carbon reward, and one of them is inflation. And I do think that if only minor economies are involved, then the risk of inflation for those minor economies would be quite substantial, because in the end, we are dealing with quantitative easing, and we are dealing with the central banks creating money out of thin air, if you will. But I do think that if the major economies are involved from the beginning, then it has a far greater chance of success. And I do think that such a scenario is possible, given the tipping points we will experience.
Given the climate crisis is a global problem, we can only solve it together as one global community. So it might be the reason for countries to come together on a policy that could guarantee some kind of resolution or solution.
And we don't think that fusion power will be available in 2045. We don't think that's realistic, that it will be available at scale. And so solar energy is the best bet we've got. And many developing countries really have a great ace under their sleeves, because they will be able to implement solar energy at scale. And so that energy can then be used also for direct air capture projects or carbon capture projects, which is interesting in terms of giving them an incentive to support the global carbon reward. And I don't think that the major economies, or really anybody, will really wake up to the climate crisis before certain tipping points have been reached. So I think once that happens, I think there will be a lot of proposals floating about for how we could deal with the issue. And I've mentioned some of the proposals at the beginning. So there's geoengineering, there's the idea of a circular economy. There's also the idea of CO2 certificates and how they could be used. And then there will also be the global carbon reward. And from my point of view, the global carbon reward is the most compelling that I've encountered. And so I hope that that's what they'll decide.